Hey, Northern Virginia friends, are you curious about what is going on in the real estate market in March of the year 2024? If so, stick around for my March 2024 housing market update. In this video, we're going to talk about what's going on in Northern Virginia with activity and inventory, list to close price, so that's negotiations to expect, what's going to happen with the interest rates maybe come March 20th when the Feds meet. And if you stick around to the end, I think I should share with you a little bit of expectation on seller concessions. All right, so let's have fun as we dive in to the real estate market. Before I forget, of course, like and subscribe to this video if you find value in it. All right, let's look at the stats together. Currently, we have 935 homes available on the market. Now, what's cool about this is that is up 6.9% from this time last month. And so that's also a little bit normal, just simply due to seasonality, right? We kind of see seasonality. We're jumping into the spring market at the end of March and, of course, in April. So we're seeing more inventory hit. Plenty of buyers as we look at under contract. We have 1,271 homes under contract at the moment. Buyers are still out there and buying and swooping up the houses. Last month, 863 homes sold. So what does that mean? What that means is we have months of inventory. We're at 1.08. And last month, we were at 1.06. All that means is we're at 0.02% more inventory this month than we were at last. And again, that is similar, to seasonality. But I think it does just show us that we're going into an actual spring market where inventory increases. Days on market is still tracking. It's 2 days, longer than it was last month. We're at 31 days. Maybe that's just simply due to, a little more homes on the market. But still, average days on the market, still pretty quick, 31 days. List to close price is at 99.1%. So that hasn't budged much either. So remember what that means is when you put a home on the market, if it's an average home, then you should anticipate negotiating about 0.9% off of the list price itself. And again, we'll talk about seller concessions, what to expect here at the very end. So, I think as we look at this graph just right here, we see that there's still activity. Buyers are still out. One of the things in regards to interest rates is we still see a lot of applications happening on the mortgage side. So I actually wrote the stat down here. I looked it up. Currently, we're at 9.7% mortgage applications are higher this week even than last week. So people are jumping out there and jumping into the market, getting the applications out ready to be able to shop here in the spring, which is great, right? Though I think one thing that just we need to be aware of, I don't anticipate this affecting buyers right this second. I don't think this is going to be affecting sellers right this second. But again, you're watching this video because you want to better understand the market as a whole, and that is inflation. So currently, right now, right, the nowcast, right, as the Feds like to say, inflation is at 3.29. Okay, and last month it was at 3.12. And one of the trends that we're seeing is in the last couple months, inflation has actually creeped up. And if you remember, Feds are really trying hard to get that down to 2. So one of the anticipations for the Fed's meeting here come March 20th is that they were going to decrease the base rate for the first time in a long time. Now, we know that they kind of stayed steady last meeting. They didn't adjust the rates. I think we're going to see the same thing actually now coming into this month, primarily because inflation has started creeping up a little bit. So I would be very surprised if they increase the rates, but I'd also be surprised if they actually lower the rates. So what does that mean to you? More of the same. Okay. The average rate right now for mortgages is about 7%. Now, cool thing, this week we're actually at the bottom of the last 3 weeks. So it's gone down slightly over the last 3 weeks, but we're still averaging around that 7%. That's national average, right, among all loans. So If you're waiting right for the rate to drop, I really wouldn't wait too long because most likely prices could potentially increase. Now, if you have been watching a lot of the negative news, or if you like to scroll on YouTube, you're going to see all of the clickbait, right? Recession, crash, and all of this. Well, we're not in a economic recession, right? But I do think we are still seeing a real estate market recession. And that's simply supply and demand and kind of what's happening with rates and affordability. And so I think one thing that we all should be watching this coming year is what happens, right, when a economic recession occurs. Well, usually it happens because of two things. One is it's maybe induced by the federal government. Two, it's often a banking crisis. And those are two of the most consistent items that's going to maybe cause a recession. And I think, the feds, the government is not looking to create a recession. That's why, economically, we're not in one. The real estate market is feeling it a little bit more. Though, the Fed's job is not to only help the real estate market, right? It's to help the economy. So I think as we look forward, though, we don't anticipate the government actually affecting a significant real estate recession that is going to drop prices. I think one of the things we can look out for is what happens in the commercial space. So I sell residential real estate. That's what I do, right? I help sellers, I help buyers, I help investors. We flip homes. And so I think in our residential space, we're not going to feel unique effects due to banking crisis in the residential space. Though when you start looking at the commercial space, it's a big hot item topic. One I encourage you to read on and to kind of, follow a little bit. Because the reality is the amount of commercial spaces that are staying vacant, if those aren't getting leased, if they're not figuring out a way to keep those loans going, then a lot of these places are going to have to foreclose on these commercial spaces. If that happens, we're talking about multi-millions and billions of dollars that these banks are now in a crisis mode due to the commercial space. So if commercial space really does tank and there becomes that much of a banking crisis in the commercial space, then banks are going to have to tighten up their overall kind of regulations. And so residential will start feeling that on the residential side, which, man, I tell you, you tighten up restrictions on the residential space when our interest rates are already high, we could really start feeling a demand recession, right? Even less demand. And if that's the case, we're going to start seeing higher days on market, which, well, would cause sellers to have to lower the prices in order to entice those handful of buyers that are there to be able to jump out. So that is one of the possibilities. Are we going to see that tomorrow? No, I don't. Are we going to see that next month? No, but it is one of these things that we can forecast and we can say, hey, we need to be watching this. So I just share that with you is one, don't get sucked into the negative news. Right now, market's good, market's solid, interest rates aren't dropping, dramatically. Prices are still slowly increasing, though we'll see what happens at the end of the year. Not because of the government, right? Elections are going to keep that nice and tight, though we ought to watch the commercial space. So a little bit of food for thought. Okay, like I had mentioned, we ought to talk about seller concessions. Take a look at this chart. So a lot of people think when it comes to seller concessions is that, in the height of the market, no seller was giving seller concessions. Well, look, at the height of the market, May 2022, right? Height of the market, 15% of sellers were actually giving seller concessions at the height of the market. So they didn't ever completely go away. All right. Now, if you're wondering where do we, stand in the lineup, well, the height was actually in May 2020 when 51% of sellers were giving seller concessions. Of course, pandemic, everything that happened, we saw the drop in that to May 2022. 15% were giving it. But look where we're at now. February of 2024, 29% of all sellers are giving seller concessions. So I want to share that with you because one, we can't again buy into the lie that, oh, no sellers were giving seller concessions because actually, you can see 15% of them were when technically nobody was. And at the moment, 29% are. Now, of course, if you're one of my clients and I'm selling your house, I'm going to tell you that that's negotiable. You don't absolutely have to give seller concessions to a buyer. Though it's also really helpful to understand what's going on in the market so that you can know when a buyer asks if that's a fair market request. Well, 30% of all buyers are going to ask. Okay. So, of course, if you don't give it, great. That's a win for you. All right. Now, if you're a buyer and you're wondering, oh, can I get, actual concessions, my closing costs paid for? Well, I would say 30% of the time, yes. Okay. So, is it out of bounds to ask? No, it's not out of bounds to ask. Now, if only 30% are giving it, and if you're in a multiple offer scenario, well, most likely percentage wise is there's going to be a buyer in there that's actually put an offer and that's not asking for closing cost assistance. So if that's you as a buyer, you might just need to be a little bit patient, right? Wait for that right home. But again, 30% are actually giving it. All right. I hope you found value in this. Please let me know at any time, whatever I can do for you, answer questions, help give you a consultation on values, whatever it is. If it's real estate related, I'd love to be able to serve you. Have an amazing, blessed March and enjoy your St. Patty's Day.